to be discussed. So you are the said nurse, you are the inner magician. So a little bit about me. I'm Ashley. I am a nurse. You all probably know that. Founder of the Cannabis Nursing School, Cannabis Nursing Solutions. Been a nurse for 14 years, done all the things nursing related, worked my way up to a 14 hospital system in performance improvement, project management. Very, very stuffy job. I not a fan. I wasn't a fan. I couldn't stay there. But I am an entrepreneur, profitable business with multiple streams of income, including book sales, including consulting with dispensaries and other things that I can go down a rabbit hole on that. ACEs Medicine was my first baby that I birthed. I think it was in 2020 because of the work that I did as an advocate on a guidelines committee that allows cannabis in schools. I am also the author of Stigmatized, which is a memoir, my personal baby birth from just my experience. And it walks through all the stigma that exists. And that's important to know because everything that I talk about these days confronts stigma in all ways possible. And so I have some of the conversations that a lot of people aren't really willing to or ready to have. I also function as a coach and am a paid speaker. I have been featured in High Times, Nurse.org, and all these different areas. And essentially, my experience is one. So I'm also an improv artist. I am also a budding stand-up comedian. And so all the things that I do in my personal life trickle into how I navigate and function as an entrepreneur and how I mentor and coach other people to do the same. Um, that's a little bit about me to begin with. Let's see. All right. I don't know. I can't tell if you all have questions, so I'm sorry. I usually do pause. I do enjoy interaction, but this is a clip from Stigmatized. I thought it was fitting because the title of the section is called Magician. All the sections, all the titles of each part are named after archetypes of the tarot from the major arcana. And so this particular one is called The Magician. And I'm just going to read this verbatim. What comes to mind when you think of a magician? Do you imagine a guy wearing a black top hat, putting on a performance with a rabbit or some other unfortunate creature? Do you imagine a man waving a stick and making a woman dressed like Vanna White disappear and then reappear? Since childhood, that is how many of us have been programmed to perceive magic. We don't often realize how this perception causes us to function in self-limiting belief systems. And this ingrained belief system about magicians removes any possibility of you being able to produce your own magic. Magic is simply creating the energy to attract like energy, thus perpetuating change. It's up to you and your subconscious to generate the energy necessary to evoke change in your life. So, whenever I read this, because this is also part of a bigger program that I've done for cultivating resilience. But whenever I do this, I always like to take some time to do the intrinsic questioning for you to internally calibrate around your thoughts around some of the concepts that I talk about. And so, because I can't interact with you today, I just hope that you take the time to really think through it. But think about magical things that have happened in your lifetime. How often did you do it on purpose? How often have you said, I can't believe this happened to me? And then consider how it was attracted to you and what role you played in it. How can you contribute to ensuring that you are actively attracting the magic that you deserve? And that question is important because a lot of times magical things happen all the time, but we think it's some sort of luck, or maybe we didn't deserve it, or we don't feel like we're worthy of it. But in all actuality, we always play a role in the things that we attract, whether it's through communication, accepting of information, accepting of advice, acceptance of your circumstance, whether it's engagement with people or other people around you in your realm of influence, your scope of influence, right? All those things contribute to how the magical things occur and how you attract the things that you deserve. And so sometimes we do not acknowledge them as things that we deserve. We only acknowledge that as a bout of luck. And I think that limitation around the idea means that we don't proactively go out and get the things that we know we deserve. So I want to connect a few concepts together, and then it'll come to an overall point that I hope that you'll appreciate. So if you're here now, I definitely recommend you stay to the end, because it all ties together. And if anybody has ever heard me talk, it can get long-winded. So this is really just a snippet of some things that I've talked about in the past. But what is spirituality? Sometimes when we talk about spirituality, we intermingle spirituality and religion. And I personally take the thought that they are separate. Everybody has their own religious perceptions, they have their own religious experiences. Some people actually um, are traumatized by religion. There are people who have been traumatized by their religious system. There are people who feel very much in love with their religious system and has supported them throughout very difficult times. And so that relationship with religion can be very, very juxtaposed, right? But when we talk about spirituality, spirituality is what I think connects us all as human. And essentially, it's the relationship, it's the connection, it's the awareness of self. And so, how aware or in tune are you with your whole being? And when we talk about self, we have to remember that self also includes subconscious and conscious programming. And when we talk about the conscious and the subconscious, we have to talk about the programming. So, conscious is what the input is, you determine whether or not it's fact or fiction, and then you store it into your subconscious. And your subconscious runs the program without you having to think. And so the thing that comes to mind when we talk about it is when like you're driving a car. All the steps that go into driving a car are it's a lot of steps. When you first learned, you had to first open the door, put the key in. Back in the day, we had to put a key in. You unlock the door, you sit in the car, you put the key in again, it turn on the ignition, you have to put your foot on the brake, you have to put the car in gear to go forward or backward or whichever way you want to go. You had to think about which way you wanted to go, and then you had to push the gas, right? Those are a lot of steps. At some point you committed to your subconscious that that's the step, that those are the steps that we're going to take every time we get in the car, and you no longer think about it. You actually probably take it for granted. And we do that with a lot of stuff, a lot of habits that we have formed. And so we have to take some time to really think about some of the programming that has been put input through our conscious and then has been accepted as subconscious. Because if you don't take inventory of that, you are not aware of some of the behaviors that you put forth, right? And so spirituality is attunement to some of the conscious and subconscious programming that's or subconscious thoughts that live internally. So we talked about self, and I'm going to break it down a little bit more. Earth, fire, wind, water are the natural elements. Heart also is a part of that, but they're the natural elements of the universe, right? And so when we talk about Earth, we're talking about the physical body. And so in healthcare, we actually put a lot of priority into the physical body. How can we fix the physical being, right? Oh no, you're bleeding. Let's put a band-aid on it. Oh no, your blood pressure is high. We can test it, we can assess it, and then we're going to give you medicine to fix it. So we're trying to fix the physical body whenever we're engaging with humans in our day-to-day practice. We have to recognize that the physical body or earth body is masculine energy. And before I keep going, I always have to break down what I mean by masculine and feminine, because not woman or man is not the presentation of the physical body in woman or man state. It's actually the energy itself. And so when we talk about masculine energy, it is very much a very dense energy. It's it's like the gavel. If you're trying to get something done, you're going to take out a hammer, you're going to break it down in order to, deconstruct something, right? And the hammer is the masculine energy, the water is the more feminine version of that, where over time the flow actually imprints and indents. And so feminine energy is very, very expansive. It's not as dense. The atoms aren't as close together. And so when we talk about that masculinity, that, well, when I talk about it, that's what I mean, and that's what I'm referring to. And so our physical body is a representation of masculine projection on earth. And many of us know that the earth is very much feminine. Our physical bodies are doer. It finds balance through finding flexibility, grounding work, right? Root chakra work, right? All of those things help support the physical body in finding balance. And so when we talk about homeostasis and cannabis, I'm going to try not to go over 45 minutes. But when we talk about homeostasis and cannabis, we have to consider a little bit outside of what homeostasis means beyond the physical body. Because when we're finding balance in the physical body, that's one aspect of the entire self, which includes the spirit body, the emotional body, and the mental body. Spirit body is representative of air, emotional body representative of water, mental body is representative of fire. And so when we talk about the spirit, she is feminine. She is connection to all things. She is very much all over, all around. She is, flow. She is intuition. She is our communication mechanism to the physical realm. And then our emotional body, very much feminine as well. She is the absorber. She is the receiver. She is the bridge between the spiritual and the physical body, and is infused in our overall aura. And our aura is the energy that is present when we walk into a room. You ever have like somebody walk in and it feels hot as soon as they walk in? That's the aura, right? Um, Sorry, guys. Um, the release of tears, really, the release of tears, again, that water, it helps you to release some of the overflow of emotion. You ever notice, like, even when you're laughing, you release tears, or when you're in a state of gratitude, or obviously when you're sad, right? Extreme joy, all release tears because it's an overabundance of a particular emotion that is taking over in that moment. And the intention is to of your emotional state is to provide guidance to the physical body in relationship to the spiritual body. And sometimes we're scared of it. Sometimes we're scared of it. And I think, and we live in fight and flight so much that our emotions don't provide guidance. They're actually responsive to the world around us. And it serves us, it doesn't serve us because it comes in the form of triggers. And the most detrimental emotions, the reason why there is lack of connection between humans, three emotions: fear, guilt, jealousy. And I'll stop there. And then we have the mental body, thought. When I think of the mental body, it's representative of fire, but I also think of the sword, um, of the conqueror, the ego-driven manipulation of the world around us. And those words put together makes it seem like I'm trying to say it's bad, but it's not, because it's necessary to build buildings, right? That requires mental body in order to create that. Okay. And so what we've done is decided that we need something as infrastructure and you took the Legos, so to speak, to build the infrastructure. And that is a manipulation of the world around us, right? And so it's necessary. But I believe that homeostasis, when we talk about it in a bigger context, a more expansive context, is really the balancing of that masculine and feminine energy in the way that we project in our physical bodies. That's the thought. And I think that healthcare has done a disservice in overly focusing on the physical and the mental body, which are both masculine type energy. And I also believe that we are in transition just because of the fact that Cannabis Nurses Network even exists, from over focus of divine masculine and potentially over focus into divine feminine. And if you think about it like a pendulum, at some point we have to balance in the middle. And I think that's the ultimate state of homeostasis. So now I want to talk to you all about witchcraft. I told you I tend to want to go rogue. And when I brought this conversation up with the tribe, um, I think there was a shock in how relevant this concept is to nurses as professionals, and it speaks to some of the reasoning why we tend to be stigmatized, right? And so witchcraft, it's a really broad term. Everybody has a different idea when we bring it up, but most likely we can all agree that we've seen some version of this witch here on the screen with the broom and the weird hat and the weird nose and the cape and all that kind of stuff. And so the definition, easily Googleable, it refers to the practice of magic, sometimes associated with Wiccan tradition or even pagan traditions. And it can include things like casting spells, performing rituals, element work, energy work. But it's important to note that not all witches practice magic, and witchcraft is not always associated with evil or harmful intention. So that's just something I can find on Google real quick, right? And I just put it here for you all. I think my point is similar to the conversation about the magician, is that we need to recognize that the imagery that we create in our mind when it comes to certain terms is erroneous in a lot of ways, because that image is representative of evil, representative of something fictitious, bad, etc. But the reality is we all are practicing witchcraft all the time. So what's the intersection of witchcraft and nursing? Ever since ever since the Middle Ages, women have been responsible for practicing midwifery, practicing medicine. That's why nurses tend to be a woman-dominated profession. And then they say that witchcraft also influenced nursing, right? Because you have to remember, we're talking about the movement of energy, right? And so isn't that what we're doing as nurses regularly, right? We think that the movement of energy is like a wand or something, but it's not, right? We practice the cultivation of energy all the time. And so there is a very significant intersection in spiritual practice that also involves ritual spells, really beliefs, but we also incorporate some of that in how we operate within herbal medicine, cannabis medicine, aromatherapy, etc. And for some reason, even though we do those things, we don't consider it witchcraft because of the idea of witchcraft being bad and nursing, quote unquote, being good. But they really come and they meet together in the middle. We do this. And especially as cannabis nurses, we do this. So I want to talk to you all about the universal laws. I'm only going to point out a couple of them. The law of divine oneness, just recognizing that everything is connected. The law of vibration, everything has its own unique vibrational frequency. right? So even you as human have your own frequency, and that's what we talked about the aura before. The law of rhythm. Nothing is permanent. Everything moves in a flow, a rhythm, a pace, a ebb, a flow, all of those things. And then the law of attraction. It's basically you attract like energy, right? And so all of those things we practice regularly, whether we believe it or not. Women have menstrual cycles, so they have a flow. It comes every 28 days or so. Everybody has their own natural flow. The moon comes up, it comes down every month. You have a new moon, you have the full moon, and then all the different moons in between. And a lot of us practice rituals around those things, not realizing what we're doing is cultivating the energy of the rhythm, right? What we're doing is we are attracting the energy that, or we are cultivating the energy, the vibrational energy within. We are expanding our aura presence, right? And so by us doing that, doesn't that sound like a lot like witchcraft? I don't know. I don't know. So I started off this conversation telling you all about myself and like what I do. And it wasn't to like brag, because I could tell y'all a lot more stuff about me if I wanted to brag, right? But I tell you all that because in most people's minds, none of those things go together. Improv doesn't really go together with entrepreneurship. Cannabis, nursing doesn't really go together. And then here I come and I'm talking to you all about witchcraft and spirituality and all those things. And so what I do within my business is help. I mean, obviously I do stuff, I help my patients, but another aspect of that is I help other nurses be able to create profitable businesses. And how do I do that? I help them by helping them cultivate the energy within. You see what I'm saying? And so why is this important for you all as cannabis nurses who are trying to be entrepreneurs or actively being entrepreneurs, making money in this space? And what does it have to do with healing? Because it's a very much a 360 approach in that we don't always recognize that we're human ourselves. So we don't recognize the flaw within ourselves, or we recognize it but try to hide it. So we put on masks. Um, as cannabis nurses, we're very hyper focused on our advocacy. Um, and sometimes we don't put enough attention on the other aspects that make us whole, right? And even the concept and the debate over holistic versus cannabis nursing, are they different or are they one and the same? And then what does healing look like for your patient? Because what's so ironic that I've found over the years as I've been assessing this environment is that we want to offer healing, but we are not actively healing ourselves in a lot of cases. Or we healed some aspect of us and then we don't want to, it's not a continuous process improvement process. I mean, it's not a continuously improved. Yeah, it's not continuously improved. And so if we're not continuously improving that process, how are we going to help support other patients in true healing? And then if we're only focusing on the physical healing aspect of things, what about the rest of them? And then I'll stop there on that point. And so again, this is just a piece, a snippet of some of the things that I have shared with the tribe. But what does all of that have to do with entrepreneur and business? So it's a couple of images that I actually just found on social media, nothing really special here. But every choice that you make is a chance for something better beyond yourself. And so I thought this image was really powerful because when I first started out in this space, I thought that my decisions didn't really impact anybody. And what I found is that 2, 3, 4 years later, it's had profound impact on the people that I've interacted with and I chose to work with. And so, beyond the moment, if you take into consideration the expansiveness of energy, the neglect of that feminine, divine feminine, and how we operate as a society, and we take into consideration where we're trying to go, you'll realize that every decision is a chance for you to do something better beyond yourself. One of the things that people say to me all the time, what's the best part about writing Stigmatized? And I'm like, to be honest with you, I wrote it for myself. That was part of my healing process. I needed it. It was required for me to heal and to see myself as more of the human that I needed to be. What I didn't realize is the impact that it would have on others. Because I'd have been fine if I only sold one book. I'd have been like, oh, okay, I sold one book. That person is inspired today. In my mind, I didn't see it as something that needed to be successful. I saw it as something that needed to be done for me. And that choice has now created a moment of inspiration for tens of nurses and beyond, because I don't even know who has the book at this point. I just found out it was in Jamaica. Gratitude increases your aura, thus increases your impact. The more space you take up, the more you have the ability to impact. And so as we go through our day to day, and the more that we identify reasons to express gratitude, the more magnetic and attractive you are to the things that you deserve. Take up space. That's the message. Number 3, relax. Whatever it is that you're going through, I respect your experience in all situations. But also realize that whatever you're going through also fits into a larger picture. Pay attention to that. Pay attention to the rhythm that you create through the experiences that you have, instead of hyper focusing on the negative experience that you have, and recognizing how it fits into the larger picture. I told you all already, guilt, fear, jealousy are probably the source of most of your problems. Take time to heal before speaking. Whenever your mind is able to be calm, you are able to function clearly. You don't need to talk a lot. You don't need to have a loud voice. Something else that's interesting that happens to me all the time. And especially if you're listening to this now, I don't think a lot of people realize that I have all of this to say, because I'm not always wanting to have to speak in every situation. And that's because I'm an observer. We also need to take some time to recognize our emotional intelligence. What triggers response? What triggers feeling? What triggers, I think that's it, response and feeling, and in your environment. And if you are able to predictively recognize when those moments occur, you'll have better control over your emotions. And if you have more control over your emotions, you're more clear in your action. And therefore, you're able to accomplish the goals that you're trying to achieve. I think this is the last thought. The closer you get to alignment in all areas, mind, mental body, spiritual body, physical body, and what did I say? Earth, fire, wind, emotional body. The more aligned you get in all those areas, the more you're able to be flexible, you're able to be open and buoyant, and that will make you more receptive and aware of the gifts that are intended for you. And if any of you have heard anything, actually, you'll hear me say things like our superpowers are our gifts. And if we can spend more time living in our gifts, expressing our gifts, the law of compensation will play in your favor. That's one thing. But life will seem more fun to engage in. So I don't know why I left this slide on here, but just different ways to create impact. I think that the work that we do in this space, I think, is more expansive than some of us give credit to. I think that we all have our own gifts that contribute to how we cultivate and create the ways that we give impact. And I think this conference or this platform is a testament of that. But take some time to find the ways that you are intended to create impact. And for me, that has shown up in how I give back to my community. It has shown up in my books. It has shown up in my advocacy. It has shown up in all the connections that I have cultivated in the work that I do. And so I want you to take some time to really figure out what ways you are intended to give through your gifts, and see if you can create a clearer path for yourself to create impact a little bit more strategically.